Senator Rosen, please.
Thank you, Chairman Reed. It's really an important hearing that we're having here today on the Air Force. Secretary Kendall, I really appreciate you being here today, for taking the time to speak with me last week ahead of today's hearing. Of course, thank you to all the witnesses. And I understand the Air Force has an updated legislative proposal to modernize the Nevada Test and Training Range. While I agree that modernization is critical for our national security and our overall readiness, I'm disappointed that the Air Force once again did not work with me or the rest of the federal delegation on its proposal, even after every Air Force senior leader promised that they would do so. Since learning of its existence, my staff and I have been asking for details on the proposal, but the Air Force has been reluctant to provide many. Our delegation, we've really enjoyed open lines of communication with the Navy as we work through its proposal to modernize Naval Air Station Fallon, and we just want to have the same relationship with the Air Force regarding your proposal to modernize the Nevada Test and Training Range. So, Secretary Kendall, recognizing where we are in the calendar year, it seems likely that your proposal would be under consideration for the fiscal year 2024 NDAA. Can you recommit to me now that you will work with me and Senator Cortez Masto and the rest of the federal delegation on this proposal, which will be submitted to Congress for our consideration?
I'd be happy to work with you, Senator. I've looked into this since we talked, and there is some discussion within the executive branch between agencies that has to take place to finalize the proposals. I think you're aware. The Intergovernmental Executive Committee that's involved is meeting in about 2 weeks, so hopefully that'll free things up so we can move forward. I've asked my staff to share with you in general what our intentions are. We can't share the specific proposal because it's going through the legislative proposal process, but we'd be happy to work with you to try to make sure there's clear communication about what we're trying to do.
Oh, I understand. At least talking generally about it, it's a good start. I also want to talk to you a little bit about housing for junior enlisted. It's an issue I've been working on. Our junior enlisted servicemen, including airmen stationed at Nevada's Nellis Air Force Base, are averaging only 12 months in on-base housing. They're being forced to move off the base due to shortages. You know this. The troops are forced to cover their rental deposits and moving costs before they're eligible to begin receiving their basic allowance for housing, or BAH. It's why I've worked to include a provision in last year's NDAA directing DOD to brief Congress by March 1st of this year on the Pentagon's plan to provide partial dislocation allowance for these troops. We still have not received this briefing, and I recently heard from Nellis that none of their junior airmen who were forced to move out of the dorms received a dislocation allowance. So, Secretary Kendall, why isn't the Air Force supporting and providing our junior enlisted airmen with the dislocation allowance you are authorized to provide them?
Senator Rose, I've looked into that as well, and there is some relief available for the airmen who have to move off the base. They can apply for advanced basic allowance for housing and get that accelerated payments for that. They're not currently getting dislocation allowance because of some limitations in the Joint Travel Regulation, but we are working to change that and correct it. It's a DOD issue, not just an Air Force issue.
We need to change that because the most junior enlisted airmen, and I know this is happening at other places, they're the least likely to be able to afford this. It's really putting a strain on them. We've authorized it. Let's have a discussion because this is really hurting our servicemen and women, particularly the young ones. So thank you. I want to move on in the time I have left to talk about C-130J recapitalization because Nevada's Air National Guard's 152nd Airlift Wing in Reno. It flies its legacy C-130s in some of the hottest temperatures, highest elevations, and in the most challenging and mountainous environments of any C-130 unit. Integral to their mission is flying the Modular Airborne Firefighting System. We call it MAFS. Upgrading the Nevada Air National Guard C-130 fleet with C-130Js would have a substantial impact on their readiness and the firefighting capabilities, not just in Nevada, but the entire western United States. I know you've seen the wildfires. They are just burning out of control. We're just plagued and I can't imagine it's going to get any better. So I'm really discouraged that the Air Force is still not considering MAFs when evaluating base candidates for C-130J. During last year's posture hearing, General Brown and then Acting Secretary Roth both committed to considering making MAFs mission part of the Air Force basing criteria for C-130J. So, Secretary Kendall, again, I'm putting you in the hot seat. Can you update the committee where you are on the process? Can we get a commitment that the 152nd Airlift Wing in Reno will be seriously considered, given its critical mission to saving lives in the West?
Senator, we will be looking at the special missions for various special missions at C-130s. MAFs is an important one, obviously, and we will be taking those special mission capabilities into consideration as we go through the basing decisions for the 130Js.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.